They say the world treats you according to the signals you send. But the signal is not in your words, it's in your state of mind. Your energy walks into the room before you do, and no one listens to your voice until they've felt your presence. You want respect? Start with your thoughts. Because every action, every gesture, every tone you use is an extension of what you think you deserve. If your thoughts are small, your posture will shrink. If your thoughts are anxious, your voice will tremble. But if your thoughts are clean, calm, composed, the world responds in kind, not instantly. Not always in the way you expect, but eventually, consistently, inescapably. Our thoughts make us what we are, and what we are radiates far louder than what we say. You can read every book on success, rehearse every tactic, wear every polished look, but if your inner world is filled with chaos, self-betrayal, and insecurity, masked as charm, no opportunity will stay. Because respect doesn't land on a surface. It sinks into substance. The mind is a magnet, not for what you want, but for what you truly believe. And if you want better opportunities, better relationships, deeper respect, it begins not by demanding more from the world, but by demanding more from your mind. Don't just ask, how do I get them to respect me? Ask, do I think in a way that respects myself? What you tolerate in silence will become the pattern of your life. And most people don't need to change their surroundings. They need to change the way they process them. They need to stop rehearsing betrayal, replaying insults, responding to ghosts. They need to stop inviting the opinions of people who don't live their life to have authority over their decisions. Never trust the people who tell you other people's secrets, because what they say in front of you is never the full truth. It's only the mask they wear when you're watching. And if they dishonor others in your presence, they will eventually dishonor you in your absence. Respect is not about popularity. It's about purity. It's about alignment between who you are and how you live. And you cannot live with clarity if your thoughts are clouded with second-guessing and invisible permission slips. There is no dignity in trying to impress people you wouldn't trade places with. And there is no strength in seeking peace from those who profit off your instability. Only you can bring peace to yourself. And peace, real peace, is magnetic. It makes people lean in. It makes opportunities recognize you. Not because you chase them, but because your energy says, I don't need anything that asks me to abandon myself. You don't attract what you chase. You attract what you embody. You attract what you are brave enough to walk away from. And the moment you stop settling for proximity over purpose, attention over alignment, noise over truth, you rewire your reality. It starts with your mind. Every belief you've inherited, every assumption you've never questioned, every thought you rehearse out of habit, it's time to lay them all out. Not with judgment, but with honesty. Because if your mind is cluttered, your life will be too. You cannot build clarity on confusion. You cannot build trust on insecurity. You cannot build opportunity on the foundation of fear. The mind must be renewed before life can be rebuilt. And you must stop thinking like the version of yourself you're no longer willing to be. You can't expect the world to treat you like a king when your inner dialogue sounds like a prisoner. The tone of your thoughts becomes the rhythm of your energy, and your energy shapes your identity long before your title ever does. No matter what happens, always be yourself. But that self, the real one, is not the version others trained you to become. It is the one that existed before the criticism, before the failure, before the comparison. Before you believed that silence meant you weren't seen. Before you thought that rejection meant you weren't worthy. Rewiring your mind is not a performance. It is a return, a remembering. A soft but radical decision to stop thinking from fear and start thinking from truth. You are not your failures. You are not your timeline. You are not behind. You are not late. You are not broken. You are becoming. And in that becoming, you must be ruthless with what no longer belongs in your field. Certain friendships will fade. Certain patterns will fight back. Certain parts of your personality, the ones built to survive, to please, to overcompensate, will beg to stay. But you cannot rewire your mind if you're still loyal to the wounds that shaped it. Growth demands grief, and healing demands silence. And sometimes, the most powerful thing you'll ever do is not to rise louder, but to withdraw quietly from what drains your dignity. You don't need revenge. You don't need recognition. You need alignment. Alignment with your highest thoughts, your cleanest intentions, your clearest vision. Because that's when opportunity shows up, not when you force it, but when you match it. Opportunity is not looking for noise. It's looking for presence. And presence can only exist in a mind that has chosen peace over pressure. So don't just fix your habits. Fix your internal atmosphere. Clean it, calm it, rebuild it. Make it a place where truth can live without needing to shout. And the moment you stop apologizing for your depth, the moment you stop shrinking your power to protect someone else's ego, the moment you stop giving access to those who cannot see beyond your surface, that is the moment everything begins to shift. That is the moment the world stops ignoring you and starts respecting you. Respect doesn't begin with volume. It begins with depth. And the deepest people are rarely the loudest in the room. They are the ones who make silence feel sacred. They carry something in their energy that says, I know who I am, even if you don't. You don't remember people because they tried to impress you. You remember them because they made you feel something rare. Stillness, truth, safety, sincerity. In a world full of noise, those who are real become unforgettable. You don't need to declare your value. You need to embody it. The people who truly carry inner confidence never feel the need to say, trust me. Their presence speaks before their words. Their consistency becomes the proof, and their self-respect becomes the boundary that no one dares to cross. Because the moment you stop needing attention is the moment you attract the right kind of attention. The moment you stop chasing people is the moment you begin attracting mirrors, people who reflect the level of work you've done within. People who speak your language, who value your energy, who don't question your worth because they've never questioned their own. You will never be respected by those who are still intimidated by self-awareness. So stop explaining, stop performing, stop bending into someone else's approval system. Every time you do, you sell your integrity for a temporary nod. And no nod is worth your peace. Real respect begins when you no longer give your power to those who wouldn't know what to do with it. Protect your energy like it's sacred ground, because it is. You are not a service provider to the emotionally immature. You are not here to entertain dysfunction. You are not here to be a sponge for other people's unprocessed pain. You are here to own your frequency, to build a life that honors your values, your vision, your voice. And to do that, you must learn the subtle power of no. No to gossip. No to pity. No to half-hearted love. No to friends who only show up when you're small. No to conversations that dim your enthusiasm. No to dynamics that require you to abandon yourself to keep the peace. You were not born to be tolerated. You were born to be trusted. And people don't trust those who have no boundaries. They don't respect those who say yes out of fear. They don't admire those who betray themselves in order to be liked. If your presence requires you to pretend, it's not presence, it's performance. And the people who truly belong in your life will never ask you to shrink. They will never ask you to water down your truth. They will never need you to explain your value, because the right people recognize right energy instantly. But that recognition only comes when you've done the work to see yourself clearly, when you've restructured your self-image from the inside out. Because no external label, no job, no status, no praise can upgrade a mind that still thinks like it's not enough. Your thoughts are the architects of your reputation. They leak into every word, every choice, every response. If your inner dialogue is rooted in guilt, fear, or unworthiness, no amount of outer polish can hide the cracks. But when your thoughts are rooted in peace, not arrogance, not performance, but peace, the entire world begins to respond differently. Confidence isn't loud, it's clean. It walks into a room and doesn't need to explain its worth. It listens more than it speaks. It pauses more than it reacts. It watches without judgment. And it never feels the need to dominate because it has nothing to prove. You don't attract respect by appearing powerful. You attract it by being whole. And wholeness is a product of alignment. When your thoughts, your values, your emotions, your choices all say the same thing, that's when the universe listens. That's when people lean in. That's when life bends toward you. Not because you fought harder, but because you became clearer. You want more opportunity? Become someone whose mind is not at war with itself, whose spirit doesn't panic when left alone, whose presence is not inflated with ego, but infused with purpose. That's who people trust. That's who people follow. That's who people remember when it matters most. And it's not because they shouted. It's because they aligned. There comes a point in your becoming when you stop needing everyone to like you, and that is when your real life begins. The moment you no longer tremble in the face of rejection. The moment your decisions no longer require a committee of approval. The moment you can stand in your truth, alone if needed, without bitterness or apology. That is the birth of personal power. People-pleasing is not kindness. It is a quiet war against the self. Every time you say yes when you mean no, every time you pretend to agree just to be safe, every time you laugh at what insults your spirit, you don't just lose respect from others. You lose something deeper, your own center. You start to doubt the sound of your inner voice. You start to forget what your truth feels like. You become a master of fitting in, but a stranger to yourself. Rewiring your mind means reclaiming your authority. The authority to say no without guilt. The authority to walk away without explaining. The authority to trust your instincts, even when they don't make sense to others. The authority to protect your peace, even if it costs you someone else's comfort. Because the one who owns their mind owns their life. And the one who needs validation to feel worthy will always be a servant to someone else's opinion. Real respect begins when you learn to sit with disapproval and not flinch. When you stop being available to guilt-tripping, to silent punishment, to emotional blackmail disguised as love, you start to rise. Not outwardly, not with arrogance, but inwardly, with a steadiness that no compliment or criticism can disturb. You become sovereign. And sovereignty is quiet. It doesn't scream for attention. It doesn't chase what's not aligned. It simply lives in truth and lets truth do the choosing. You don't need to explain why you've changed. You don't need to defend your evolution to people committed to misunderstanding it. Growth is not a negotiation. It is a liberation. And the people who belong in your future will not shame the healing that rescued you from your past. Let go of the illusion that you owe access to everyone you've known. Some people were only meant to witness a single version of you. Their chapter in your story has closed, not out of hate, but out of completion. Don't reopen the book just because they ask for another page. Your job is not to keep others comfortable. Your job is to keep yourself honest. And honesty, real honesty, will often cost you things. It will cost you roles you played to survive. It will cost you relationships that fed off your silence. It will cost you the version of you that existed only to be liked. But what you gain in return is everything. You gain clarity. You gain freedom. You gain emotional independence, the rare and radical ability to feel secure without being understood, to stay grounded in the middle of disapproval, to hold your center when others would prefer you shrink. That is not rebellion. That is integrity. Because the more whole you become, the less available you are to chaos. You stop being pulled into drama that used to distract you. You stop being triggered by people who once controlled you. You stop being hungry for attention that once made you feel alive. You start choosing peace over popularity, depth over drama, truth over performance. And the moment you make that shift from external control to internal clarity, the game changes. Respect comes. Opportunity aligns, not because you're louder, but because you're clearer. And clarity is power. Clarity cuts through manipulation. It untangles confusion. It draws boundaries without needing a speech. It says, "This is who I am," not with defensiveness, but with dignity. Because you no longer live to be liked, you live to be aligned. And that alignment becomes your gravity. There is a moment in your inner evolution when chaos no longer seduces you, where your nervous system, once addicted to noise and drama, begins to crave silence, begins to prefer distance over dysfunction, begins to honor stillness over stimulation. This is not isolation. This is liberation. You are not pulling away because you are bitter. You are pulling away because you've remembered the cost of being constantly entangled in what drains you. The mind, once cluttered with every opinion, every argument, every unresolved echo, begins to clear. And in that clearing, you become light. You begin to breathe more fully. You begin to see yourself without the smoke of other people's projections. And for the first time, you realize most of what you carried wasn't yours. You took on their problems, their moods, their urgency, their expectations. You made their unhappiness your responsibility. You answered calls you didn't have the energy to take. You entered rooms your intuition warned you about. You kept showing up for people who kept walking away from themselves. But now you understand the sacred art of emotional minimalism. You no longer chase what avoids you. You no longer convince people of your value. You no longer perform in rooms that don't recognize your presence. You love deeply, but you hold lightly. You offer compassion, but you don't abandon your boundaries. You give freely, but not at the cost of your own dignity. You begin to guard your peace with a clarity that surprises people, especially those who were used to the version of you that tolerated everything. And in this version, the upgraded version, you no longer confuse kindness with self-erasure. You no longer confuse loyalty with self-destruction. You no longer confuse intensity with intimacy. You no longer call chaos chemistry. You begin to understand that respect isn't about how others treat you when you're at your best. It's how they respond to your no, your stillness, your silence, your absence, when peace is no longer possible in their presence. That's when true character is revealed. And that's when you learn who belongs in your life, not by how they celebrate you, but by how they honor your boundaries. There is no virtue in staying where you are diminished. There is no strength in enduring what is slowly eroding your self-worth. The strongest people are not the ones who survive toxic cycles. They are the ones who refuse to participate in them at all. You do not owe your energy to places that demand your collapse. You owe your life to your clarity. Your future depends on how willing you are to let go of what no longer grows you. Because you can't build something sacred while clinging to what poisons you. Let them go the conversations that always spiral into guilt, the environments that keep you small, the relationships that only function when you abandon your truth. Walk away, not because you hate them, but because you love yourself enough to stop bleeding for people who aren't healing. And in that walking away, you don't lose, you lead. You become a leader not of crowds, not of titles, but of your own life. A leader who doesn't react to every opinion. A leader who doesn't chase connection, but creates it through presence. A leader who walks into a room, not needing to dominate, but carrying such calm, such steadiness, such truth, that everything around them begins to recalibrate. You don't lead with control. You lead with clarity. You lead with peace. You lead by being so deeply rooted in your own energy that no storm can pull you out of yourself. This is what rewiring the mind does. It returns you to your throne, not above others, but within yourself. And when you sit on that throne, you no longer flinch when people misunderstand you. You no longer panic when things take time. You no longer crumble when others withdraw, because your foundation is no longer built on their presence. It's built on your own alignment. And that kind of leadership doesn't need to shout. It doesn't need to seek. It simply becomes. The real test of who you've become is not found in isolation, but in the small, silent corners of daily life. In the conversation where you used to shrink, but now you speak with calm assurance. In the moment where you used to chase closure, but now you choose your dignity. In the insult that once triggered you, but now dissolves against the walls of your stillness. This is grace, under pressure. And grace is not weakness. Grace is restraint sharpened by wisdom. It is power that does not need to roar to be recognized. You do not win respect by overpowering others. You earn it by being unshakable, not emotionally numb, but internally centered. You're not here to be the loudest. You're here to be the most anchored. Because people may forget what you said, but they will never forget the energy you brought into the room. They remember how safe they felt around you, how heard, how free they were to be themselves without judgment. And that kind of memory cannot be manufactured. It can only be embodied. There is a kind of elegance that comes from not needing to dominate the space, a magnetic presence that comes from someone who knows the difference between reacting to life and responding to it. Reactions are loud. Responses are clean. And when you respond with clarity, instead of ego, with poise, instead of panic, you rise into a category most never touch, emotional authority. That authority doesn't demand to be followed. It invites trust without asking for it. It creates safety in the way it listens, not just with the ears, but with the heart. It de-escalates conflict with presence, not power. It doesn't rush to defend. It doesn't interrupt to be right. It allows others to speak, not because it's submissive, but because it is secure. The ones who cultivate this inner authority are the ones the world quietly watches, not because they are flashy, but because they are true. And you can become this person, not by adding layers, but by stripping them away. Strip away the need to be liked. Strip away the habit of over-explaining. Strip away the desire to be impressive. Strip away the subtle fear that says, if I don't prove myself, I'll be forgotten. Because the truth is, you're not here to be remembered by everyone. You're here to be recognized by the right ones. And the right ones, the real ones, do not need a performance. They need presence. They need honesty. They need depth. And that is what you carry when your mind is no longer entangled in the need to win favor from those who lack the eyes to see you. You do not earn long-term respect by chasing approval. You earn it by living in integrity, even when it costs you short-term comfort. Especially then, when you keep your word, when you follow through, when you say what you mean, and mean what you say not out of duty, but out of alignment. Your clarity becomes your reputation. Your self-respect becomes your resume. And people feel that long before they ever read your credentials. You don't need status to earn respect. You need congruence, the harmony between your inner and outer world. When your values match your voice, when your boundaries match your body language, when your tone matches your truth. Because in a world where everyone is selling a version of themselves, the rarest thing is someone who just is. That's who people trust. That's who people follow. That's who people remember. And you do not get there by trying harder. You get there by getting quieter, by clearing the noise in your mind, by getting honest about what you believe and what beliefs are silently undermining your greatness. You rewire your mind not through force, but through attention, by choosing which thoughts you keep and which ones you let pass like clouds in the sky. And the more intentional you become, the lighter you walk. The lighter you walk, the more opportunities unfold before you. And the more peaceful your presence becomes, the more the world trusts you, not because you demand it, but because your energy proves it. Solitude is not the absence of love, it is the presence of self. And those who fear being alone have not yet met themselves beyond the noise. But when you finally do, when you sit in silence, without needing a distraction, without needing a performance, without reaching for another voice to validate your own, something ancient and powerful awakens within you. It is not loneliness. It is the quiet return of your original strength. The most magnetic people you'll ever meet are not the loudest. They are the most at peace. They have nothing to prove because they no longer feel separate from who they are. That is inner charisma, not charm rehearsed, but essence remembered. You feel it in the pause between their words, in the groundedness of their posture, in the unshaken calm of their energy. When everyone else is reaching for attention, they are not performing. They are embodied. That embodiment is built in solitude. It is forged in those long walks where you process instead of vent. It is cultivated in the quiet evenings where you reflect instead of react. It is found in the discipline of choosing your own company before begging to be seen by others. And the more time you spend with your real self, not your persona, not your role, but your root, the more powerful your presence becomes. You no longer panic when someone walks away. You no longer chase conversations just to feel relevant. You no longer stay in rooms where your silence is not honored. Because you understand, your self-respect is the gatekeeper of your peace, and peace is not passive. Peace is power under full control. It is the refusal to give your energy to what no longer feeds your spirit. And when you live like this quietly, honestly, powerfully, something shifts, not just in how people see you, but in how life responds to you. Doors that were once closed begin to unlock, not because you banged louder, but because you stopped knocking on the wrong ones. People begin to treat you differently, not because you demanded it, but because your energy no longer makes space for anything less. Opportunities begin to find you not because you hustled harder, but because you became a clear match for what you used to chase. And you realize, self-respect was the key all along. Not the kind of self-respect that yells, "I deserve more," but the kind that quietly declines what no longer aligns. That leaves without drama. That forgives without access. That loves without attachment. That leads without needing followers. That kind of self-respect is spiritual armor. It shields you from manipulation. It frees you from codependency. It breaks the generational cycles of seeking permission to exist. And the ones who carry it, not in theory, but in action, become beacons in a world full of noise. Because in the end, it's not how many people follow you that matters. It's how deeply you've followed your own truth. It's not how loud your success is. It's how silent your peace becomes when you know you're living honestly. You don't need to be everywhere. You just need to be aligned where you are. And from that place, you don't chase anything. Respect arrives. Opportunity lands. Doors open. The right ones stay. The wrong ones fall away without a sound. Because you are no longer signaling confusion. You are radiating clarity. And clarity is irresistible. Eventually, you stop asking for life to get easier, and you start asking for the strength to meet it fully. You stop asking others to understand you, and start understanding yourself so clearly that no misunderstanding can shake your foundation. That is emotional sovereignty. Not detachment from emotion, but mastery of it. Not the absence of feeling, but the refusal to be ruled by fleeting moods, old stories, or someone else's chaos. You do not become powerful by suppressing your pain. You become powerful by feeling it fully and still choosing alignment over reaction, dignity over drama, peace over provocation. You don't need to match their energy. You need to anchor your own. Because the world doesn't reward the loud. It rewards the grounded. It rewards those who know when to speak and when to remain silent. It rewards those who don't need to be right to feel whole, who don't fight every battle to feel seen, who don't show up to be noticed, but to live with intention. You've learned now, not everyone gets access. Not everyone gets an explanation. Not everyone gets to walk beside you just because they once knew your name. Some people only loved you when you were unsure of yourself. Some only celebrated you when you played small. Let them go. You are no longer available for dynamics that ask you to shrink, silence yourself, or seek permission to dream. The most important relationship you will ever have is the one between you and your own mind, the one between your inner truth and your outer expression. And when that relationship becomes clear, steady, whole, the rest of the world begins to organize itself accordingly. Your boundaries become sacred, not walls of bitterness, but gates of discernment. Your voice becomes deliberate, no longer an echo of fear, but a statement of self-awareness. Your presence becomes a lighthouse, not because you are trying to guide others, but because you found your own light and refused to dim it, even when it made others uncomfortable. And here, in this state of alignment, you no longer need to chase purpose, you become it. Your life becomes a quiet revolution. You walk differently, not because you seek applause, but because your soul has stopped compromising. You work with excellence, not for validation, but because mediocrity no longer matches your energy. You love fully, not to be saved, but because your cup now overflows from the peace you've built inside. And from this place, respect finds you. The kind that cannot be taken away. The kind that doesn't need a stage. The kind that outlasts trends, opinions, seasons. The kind that is earned in silence and lives forever in the way people feel after being in your presence. Because in the end, that's what leaves a mark. Not the resume, not the metrics, not the applause, but the energy, the integrity, the truth you chose again and again when no one was watching. And you are no longer watching the clock, waiting to be seen. You are already living as the version of yourself that doesn't wait, that doesn't fold, that doesn't retreat when misunderstood. You're living with purpose, quiet, intentional, unbothered, clear. And that is what rewiring your mind was always about. Not success as the world defines it, but respect as the soul recognizes it. Not chasing opportunity, but becoming it. You've walked through the fire of doubt. You've stood in rooms where your silence felt louder than your words. You've carried dreams too fragile to speak aloud and desires too sacred to explain. And yet you kept going. You kept walking. You kept rising, even when no one clapped, even when no one believed, even when the world looked away. And that is the origin of true respect. Because the ones who command lifelong respect are not those who demand it. They are those who earn it in the dark, in the quiet, in the discipline of their thoughts, in the integrity of their choices. in the unwavering consistency of who they are when no one is watching and everything is uncertain. You've learned now that you don't attract what you say you want. You attract what you are brave enough to become. And you've become the kind of person who no longer begs for alignment, you embody it. You no longer chase opportunity, you walk as one. You no longer seek permission, you carry the authority of someone who gave it to themselves. Because you've remembered something, most people forget your mind is your master key. And when you rewire it, when you reclaim it, when you rebuild it thought by thought, day by day, moment by moment, your entire reality reshapes itself around you. No more apologizing for your boundaries. No more explaining your peace. No more shrinking to keep the room comfortable. You are not here to be consumed. You are here to be honored. And the world begins to honor you the moment you begin to live in such alignment that anything less than truth feels foreign. So stand tall now, not with ego, but with reverence. Speak now not to be heard, but to offer something real. Move now not to chase worth, but to express it. Live now not in fear of what others will think, but in devotion to what you now know. You know your energy is sacred. You know your time is currency. You know your presence is power. You know your truth is enough. And you will never again negotiate your worth with a world that profits from your confusion. You are no longer waiting for respect. You are no longer searching for opportunity. You have become both. Let that be the quiet legacy you carry, not built in noise, but in truth, not proven with force, but remembered through presence. Because in the end, the people who move the world are not the loudest, not the flashiest, not the most approved. They are the ones who rewired their minds to never again abandon themselves and lived every day as if self-respect was the most sacred success of all. And it is.